Christmas is supposed to be a time of joy and warmth, a season of laughter and togetherness. But not every Christmas story is wrapped in comfort and cheer. Some holidays carry shadows, lurking just beneath the surface of the festive lights. The story I'm about to share is one of those. A chilling tale that reminds us how even the happiest traditions can turn into nightmares. This is the story of a family, a snowman, and a curse. What starts as a simple holiday in a charming old town spirals into something no one could have ever imagined. Be warned, this isn't just a Christmas tale. It's a Christmas nightmare. So dim the lights, settle in, and listen closely to the story of the snowman's curse. Asterisk, the Petersons had been looking for a fresh start after a tough year. Financial struggles, moving schools for the kids, and the stress of city life. They decided to relocate to the countryside. That's how they found themselves standing in front of their new home. An old Victorian house at the edge of a small, snow-covered town. The house was undeniably charming, with its pointed gables, wraparound porch, and towering chimneys. It seemed to glow against the white snow surrounding it. The price had been too good to pass up, but the Petersons couldn't shake the feeling that something about the house was off. On move-in day, the locals watched them with uneasy smiles. At the town's hardware store, where they stopped for supplies, an older man behind the counter leaned forward as Mr. Peterson paid. "You're moving into the old Darrow house?" he asked, his voice low. "Yes," Mr. Peterson replied. "Beautiful place. Needs some work, but we're looking forward to fixing it up." The man hesitated, his eyes darting around the store as if to make sure no one was listening. "Just be careful during Christmas," he murmured. "And don't go building any snowmen out front." The comment left Mr. Peterson puzzled, but he brushed it off. Small towns always had their quirks, and this one seemed no different. With Christmas only a week away, the Petersons quickly settled into their new home. The kids, 14-year-old Jake and 8-year-old Lily, were ecstatic about the snow-covered yard. On Christmas Eve, the family decided to build the centerpiece of their decorations, a massive snowman. They spent hours shaping the snow, laughing as they worked together. Jake found an old, tattered top hat in the attic and decided it would be perfect for their creation. When they finished, the snowman was an imposing figure, nearly 7 feet tall, with cold eyes, a crooked smile, and long, branch-like arms. The family admired their work, but as they stepped back, Lily frowned. "Mommy," she whispered, clutching her mother's coat. "I don't like it. It's looking at me." Mrs. Peterson laughed and ruffled Lily's hair. "It's just a snowman, sweetheart. Nothing to be afraid of." But that night, as the snow fell heavier, things began to change. Jake was the first to notice. Around midnight, he woke to the sound of crunching snow. Peeking out his window, he saw footprints leading from the snowman toward the house. His stomach churned as he followed the trail with his eyes. It stopped right below his bedroom window. He wanted to tell his parents, but he convinced himself it was just his imagination. Snow couldn't move on its own, could it? The next morning, the family found the snowman had shifted. It was closer to the house. "All right, who's the prankster?" Mr. Peterson asked, his tone light, but his expression serious. "It wasn't me," Jake protested, "and it definitely wasn't Lily." Mrs. Peterson shrugged it off. Maybe the wind pushed it, or the snow shifted. But over the next few days, things only got stranger. Night 1 asterisk faint footprints appeared again in the snow, leading from the snowman to various windows. Night 2 asterisk the family dog, Max, began barking incessantly at the snowman, refusing to go outside. Night 3 asterisk Jake set up a camera in his room to catch whatever, or whoever, was moving the snowman. When he reviewed the footage, his blood ran cold. Around 3 a.m., the snowman's head turned toward the house, its cold eyes glinting unnaturally. When Jake showed the footage to his parents, they were shaken but still skeptical. "It's probably a trick of the light," Mr. Peterson said, though his voice lacked conviction. Desperate for answers, Mr. Peterson decided to visit the local diner. where he struck up a conversation with the waitress. When he mentioned the snowman, her face paled. "You need to get your family out of that house," she said, her voice trembling. "People don't talk about it, but there's a story about the Darrow house and the snowman." She went on to explain that years ago, the Darrow family had lived there. One Christmas, they built a snowman just like the Petersons. But as the days passed, strange things began happening. By Christmas morning, the entire family had vanished. The only thing left was the snowman. The waitress leaned in, her voice barely above a whisper. "Every family that moves into that house, they all build a snowman, and they all disappear." That night, the Petersons decided to destroy the snowman. Jake grabbed a bat, and Mr. Peterson wielded a shovel. But as they struck the snowman, an unearthly scream pierced the air. The snow seemed to fight back, reforming as quickly as they could destroy it. Panicked, the family retreated inside. That's when the whispers began. Faint at first, they grew louder, echoing through the house. They seemed to come from the walls, the windows, and finally, from the snowman itself. Lily discovered an old journal in the attic that detailed a ritual gone wrong. The snowman wasn't just a decoration. It was a cursed entity bound to the house by a Christmas tradition. The only way to stop it was to burn its hat. Before they could act, the snowman breached the house. Frost crept up the windows as the air grew bitterly cold. The snowman's crooked smile now stretched into a grotesque grin, and its cold eyes glowed with malice. The family barricaded themselves in the living room, but the snowman's icy hands began pounding on the door. Jake and Mr. Peterson made a dash for the basement, where they had hidden the hat. The snowman followed, its presence filling the house with an unnatural chill. Finally, Jake found the hat. With trembling hands, he lit it on fire. The snowman let out a deafening shriek, its body collapsing into a puddle of dirty water. The house trembled violently before falling silent. Asterisk, the Petersons fled the house that night, never looking back. The locals say the snowman still reappears every Christmas, waiting for its next victims. So, if you find yourself building a snowman this holiday season, think twice. Because sometimes, what we bring to life in the snow might be hiding something far darker beneath its frozen surface. Asterisk. Christmas is a time of tradition, decorating trees, sharing gifts, and hanging ornaments passed down through generations. These trinkets carry stories and memories, but what if some ornaments carry something far darker? This is the story of the Wilkins family and the ornaments they found in their new home. A tale of festive joy turned to terror, where each decoration held a secret too horrifying to imagine. As you listen to this story, remember, not every holiday heirloom brings good cheer. Some carry curses that even time cannot erase. This is the chilling tale of the Christmas ornaments. Asterisk, the Wilkins family was thrilled to move into their dream house just in time for Christmas. The house was a century-old colonial-style home, with wide windows, a wraparound porch, and a towering fir tree in the front yard. The real estate agent had mentioned the house's history, a quaint holiday home for a wealthy family in the 1920s. But the Wilkins didn't care. It was perfect. The week before Christmas, the family began unpacking. While exploring the attic, 12-year-old Emma found an old wooden chest covered in cobwebs. Inside, she discovered a collection of antique Christmas ornaments, each meticulously painted and crafted. There were baubles of glass with intricate designs, figurines of angels and reindeer, and even a star made of tarnished silver. Emma brought the ornaments downstairs, her eyes gleaming. "Look, Mom, these are beautiful. Can we use them?" Mrs. Wilkins hesitated. The ornaments, while stunning, had a strange, almost sinister aura. The colors were faded, and some of the figurines had eerie, lifelike expressions. But she shrugged it off. Antique decorations were supposed to look old. "Why not?" she said, forcing a smile. "They'll give the tree some character." The family spent the evening decorating the tree, laughing and drinking hot cocoa. As they hung the last ornament, a glass bell that seemed to hum faintly when touched. Emma whispered, "I think the ornaments are watching us." Her father laughed. "You've got a vivid imagination, kiddo." But that night, strange things began to happen. The first sign of trouble came just before midnight. Mrs. Wilkins woke to the sound of faint jingling, like the soft chime of bells. She sat up in bed listening. The sound seemed to be coming from the living room, where the tree stood. Curious but unalarmed, she went to investigate. The living room was bathed in the warm glow of Christmas lights, but something felt wrong. The ornaments on the tree seemed to shimmer unnaturally, their colors shifting in the dim light. As she stepped closer, the glass bell Emma had hung earlier suddenly swung on its own, emitting a low, resonant hum. Mrs. Wilkins froze, her breath catching in her throat. But before she could react, the sound stopped, and the room returned to silence. The next morning, Emma ran into the kitchen, her face pale. "Mom, the ornaments, they moved." "What do you mean?" Mrs. Wilkins asked, trying to keep her tone calm. "They weren't where we put them last night. The angel was at the top of the tree, but now it's in the middle. And the reindeer, it's looking at me." Mr. Wilkins chuckled, ruffling Emma's hair. Maybe the ornaments just wanted to rearrange themselves. But as the day went on, more unsettling things happened. The glass bell chimed faintly every hour, even though no one touched it. The angel figurine seemed to turn its head slightly, its painted eyes following anyone who passed by. The family cat, Mittens, hissed and clawed at the tree, refusing to go near it. By nightfall, the Wilkinses couldn't ignore it any longer. Something was wrong with the ornaments. Desperate for answers, Mr. Wilkins decided to visit the local library. He combed through old records and newspapers, hoping to learn more about the house and its previous owners. What he found was chilling. The house had belonged to the Harrington family in the 1920s. They were known for their extravagant Christmas parties, but one year, tragedy struck. On Christmas Eve, the entire family was found dead in the living room. Their deaths were unexplained, and the case remained unsolved. A librarian, noticing Mr. Wilkins's distress, approached him. "You're living in the old Harrington house, aren't you?" she asked quietly. He nodded. "People say their spirits are tied to the ornaments. Legend has it that the ornaments hold fragments of their souls, trapped there by some kind of ritual. Every family that's used those decorations. Well, let's just say they didn't stay around for long." That night, Mr. Wilkins returned home, determined to get rid of the ornaments. But as he reached for the first one, a delicate glass reindeer, it burned his hand, leaving a red mark. The ornaments wouldn't let themselves be removed. The family tried to ignore the tree, but it was impossible. The lights flickered constantly, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Emma claimed she heard whispers coming from the ornaments. The angel figurine began to move, its head turning unnaturally, its painted smile stretching wider. On Christmas Eve, the ornament's power reached its peak. The glass bell began to chime loudly, echoing through the house. The family watched in horror as the ornaments floated off the tree, circling the room like malevolent spirits. The whispers grew louder, forming words, "Stay with us forever." Realizing they had no choice, the Wilkinses decided to destroy the ornaments. Armed with a hammer and a blowtorch, they began smashing and burning them one by one. As each ornament was destroyed, the house trembled and ghostly screams filled the air. The glass bell was the last to go. When Mr. Wilkins shattered it, the lights exploded, plunging the house into darkness. For a moment, everything was silent. Then, one by one, the ornaments disintegrated into ash, and the oppressive presence in the house lifted. Asterisk, the Wilkins family survived, but they never spoke of that Christmas again. The ornaments' ashes were buried deep in the woods, far away from anyone who might stumble upon them. To this day, the Harrington house remains empty. Locals say you can still hear the faint chime of a bell on Christmas Eve, a reminder of the curse that once plagued the house. So, if you ever find old ornaments in a dusty attic, think twice before using them. Because some decorations carry more than just memories. They carry curses, asterisks,